Hello, welcome to the second pre-departure information session for Coach for College. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about the living conditions while you're in Vietnam, what to expect with regards to that, and also cover a few logistics such as how to communicate with your family back home, how to access money while you're in Vietnam, how much money to bring, a few tips on health and safety, a few things like that. So let's get going. First of all, there's a quick overview of the geography of Vietnam here. As we mentioned last time, Vietnam has this S-shaped curve. It's a very long and narrow country. At its widest point, it's only about 370 miles long, which is the big head up there in the north. But you can see that for most of its length, it's much less than that, only maybe 100 or 150 miles at the most. It borders China at the top in the north, and then about 2/3 of the way down is all Laos on the left side, and then the southern part, the southern third, borders Cambodia. The capital's in the north, Hanoi. In the south, the largest city in the south is Ho Chi Minh City. You'll see the red star in the bottom that's outside the triangle. That's the largest city in Vietnam. That's where most of you will fly in. It is it's the largest. It's kind of like New York City in that it has the biggest population, and it's the financial and industrial center of the country, and is growing quite rapidly. It has a high population, 88 million. That's it's more than a quarter of the population of the United States in an area that's much smaller. Here you can see Vietnam compared to the United States if we were to lay it over the United States. So you can see it's not small in terms of length. It goes all the way from the Canadian border close to the southern tip of Florida. But it's not particularly large in terms of area. On the right, you can see the Mekong Delta, which is where we hold our camps in the south. This is a view from space. You can see that the delta provides a lot of irrigation. That's a huge area there that you're seeing. It's the whole southern tip of Vietnam. And you can see how the river branches into lots of several main canals, several main branches, actually, which are actually huge rivers. When you're sitting on them, those are several hundred yards wide, those main branches. And then that whole green area is crisscrossed by a very fine network of canals, many of them man-made. I think the French actually dug a lot of them out. It was a big swampy area that wasn't very inhabitable, but they dug a lot of canals that provide transport and also drain the land so that it can be cultivated. And it's extremely fertile from centuries of topsoil being washed down from China and Thailand and Laos and Cambodia. And since they have good water, it's a great rice-growing region and fruit-growing region. Our camps are located south of the southernmost of those branches, about in 45 minutes to an hour south, right in the middle of that green area. By contrast, Da Nang in central Vietnam is kind of scrunched between a mountain range and the coast, and is much drier. It doesn't have as many rivers. There is some rice growing, but not quite to the extent of this area as being the breadbasket of Vietnam, one of the two main rice-growing regions. Okay, in terms of climate, you've all heard of the rainy season, the monsoons. Before I had lived in a country that had this kind of weather pattern, I imagined nonstop downpours for 2 months on end. In reality, more often, it'll be sunny a good part of the day, or maybe overcast, but there'll be a big downpour for 30 minutes to an hour, maybe in the afternoon, and after that it's clear. So it kind of brings a refreshing break. You can see the kids are all happy. It's often people have fun when it starts pouring rain and floods everything. Maybe have an impromptu soccer game and change plans for that hour, but it cools it down and rapidly dries afterwards. In central Vietnam, where Da Nang is, we don't have as much experience with many summers, but it tends to be hotter but less humid, with less rain than in the Mekong Delta. We don't have camps up in Hanoi in the north, but it actually in the winter they'd actually have a winter season there, and it gets quite chilly. You'll see the temperature where we hold our camps is in the high 80s. This is Ho Chi Minh City in the south. Averages the high being around 87 to 90 degrees in the summer, and quite humid. So yeah, we'll be ready for a shower at the end of the day, but it isn't quite as oppressive as most people imagine it to be. It isn't. If you're coming from Florida, you're used to it. In terms of where we live, each site is a little different. We currently run several sites, and in each one we live in a guest house. This can be viewed a little bit like a Vietnamese version of a motel, potentially a small family-run motel. They usually have 10, 15 rooms, maybe a few more, and we, in most cases, rent all those rooms, so it's our facility for the whole time. The family runs it, and they cook for us. You'll see in the top left picture, that's one of our sites. That's actually in the family's living room. They set up these low tables, which are very typical in Vietnam, also for street side food, little kindergarten-sized chairs and low tables, and they cook. It's all Vietnamese food. The picture to the right is us in front of that room that we were eating in. It's in the evening going over, for competition day, the sports drills so that all the coaches are on the same page. What is that? That's the basketball team, I believe, going over their drills so that all the other coaches know what their kids need to do. I'm going to quickly go to this video. You can see the link to it, so you can download it if you want to get the audio, get a glimpse of what Vietnamese sounds like. But I'll show you that video here. And this is one of our sites in the Mekong Delta, what it looks like. You'll see the rooms are all around, in this case, around a central courtyard. There are two buildings, and the rooms open out onto the outside. Each room, we'll see, has a bathroom all walled off in the corner. Here we go. Entering the room, tile floors is quite typical in Vietnam. So here's the bathroom, the walled off corner here. It doesn't have a roof on it, so it's open up above, but it has a folding door that you can close. And the whole bathroom is a shower. This is very typical in Vietnam. There's a drain in the floor. You'll see, let me pause it briefly. So there's a shower head. There's a Western style toilet. There's a bucket. The water pressure isn't great, so it's to supplement sometimes for rinsing your hair. You have that scoop right there that you can use to throw more water over yourself. In this case, the toilets aren't connected to a water tank, so it is a regular sit-down toilet. You fill up the bucket with water from the tap there, and then pour that into the toilet to flush it. It's unusual for Americans, but it works pretty well. It's not a big problem. There is no hot water, but the tanks are on the roof, so it gets fairly warm in the middle of the day. It's kind of on the chilly side in the morning, but pretty refreshing in the evening when you come home and want to cool down after the day. Let's keep going. You'll see beds are double in Vietnam. That's pretty typical. They usually don't have two beds in the room. Let's see as we turn on. There's a fan. There is air conditioning. It doesn't always work, and Vietnamese like it a little cooler than we do. Or a little warmer, sorry. But you'll see there's a bed. It's quite large, but we do usually share beds. There are very many other options in Vietnam. Vietnamese are pretty used to this. Fortunately, student athletes are much more used to this than most Americans, so most people are fine with it. So you can see it's a basic room, but clean and large enough. It works pretty well. Let's see. Let's keep going. There's a TV, but you don't get much. A couple of Vietnamese channels. We do, let's see, as the video comes to a close here, these fruit trees, these are fruit trees in the courtyard. These are rose apples. Google it if you want. One of the cool things about Vietnam are all the different fruits you never heard of. These are called rose apples, and they don't have much to do with an apple. They're very light and airy and have a light pink color. So rooms are double, sometimes triple. We generally mix rooms between the Vietnamese and American coaches. Both groups are a little bit shy at the beginning, and this definitely helps break the ice, helps develop relationships between the groups. and it's a learning experience living with someone from somewhere else. Let me move up to here. I will say that the living conditions are certainly not quite as comfortable as some of the luxurious places we have on college campuses. It's definitely on the rustic side, but I've found that the coaches who have the mindset of viewing this as a really exciting adventure, something to experience, a Vietnamese way of life, not only going to Vietnam, but getting off the tourist path, living with Vietnamese in a very typical Vietnamese type environment, view all the relative differences and sometimes lack of comfort as a good story that they'll be telling for years to come and tell their friends and family when they get back. And people with that sort of view and approach really have a good time, learn a lot, enjoy things, and the differences don't really bother them very much. So I would definitely encourage that sort of approach. Yeah, we often sleep under mosquito nets. There are quite a few mosquitoes and other bugs in Vietnam, not so different as if you're out camping in the United States in the summer, but being that the rooms are more open to the outside, there are more insects that get in, but the mosquito nets keep those away pretty well, and nothing to be particularly concerned about. The food is cooked by the local family that runs the guest house, so it's all Vietnamese food. There's no McDonald's down the street. So Vietnamese food is quite good. Most people really enjoy it. It is very different. The flavors are different. It does take some getting used to if you're not used to eating Asian food, which I wasn't before I moved to Southeast Asia. It took me a little bit to get used to it and enjoy it. Now I very much appreciate it. But a lot of people have already explored Asian cuisine some and find it quite excellent and really find it to be a highlight of being in Vietnam. So whatever level of experience you have, I encourage you to try new things, branch out a little bit past what you're comfortable with, and try things you might not normally try. And you might surprise yourself and realize there's several things that you really enjoy that you wouldn't have expected to beforehand. But the food is based on a lot of fresh ingredients, fresh fruits and vegetables. It's all cooked from scratch locally. A lot of noodle dishes, particularly for breakfast. There's quite a bit of seafood, fried fish, shrimp, both from seas and rivers. Chicken is a common protein as well as beef and pork. And one of my highlights is the many kinds of tropical fruits. The first time I went to Southeast Asia, I was expecting to have good papayas and mangoes and excellent fruits that we're used to, such as bananas and pineapples. But I didn't realize that there were a good 15 to 20 kinds of fruits I never even imagined existed that were readily available in the markets, most of which are quite good. Dragon fruits, mangosteens, rambutans, the infamous durian, which is a pungent, somewhat smelly fruit that some people love and some people don't like very much, and several others, lychees, which you might have heard of, but it'll be fun to try those out different days throughout the camp. And I highly recommend the tropical fruit smoothies as well. Those can be quite cheap, 50 cents to $1, and pick whatever fruits you want and have it blended up. It's quite good. You also see there's someone washing clothes in one of the bathrooms there in the middle picture. We often wash by hands, either in a bucket or a basin. At lunch or in the evening, maybe get together around the washing area and all wash together. The guest house owners often will wash for us if you wish to pay them, and it's relatively inexpensive to do so. You can also see there one of the schools. There's crossing one of the canals in the Mekong Delta I talked about. Those canals crisscross the countryside, and we're always crossing one or driving along one, and there'll be small boats going along there as well, transporting people and all kinds of merchandise. Okay, so this is a common question, especially for parents. Images for Americans, especially of our parents' generation of Vietnam, is kind of how we maybe view Afghanistan today. It's been on the news for years. It's all about war and tragedies and hardship, and probably conjures up a lot of images of anti-American sentiment. In reality, it's quite different. I often am told by participants that they feel safer in Vietnam than they do at home, and I think that's fairly well founded from a personal safety point of view. There's very little violent crime, and we are very, very well received. People are very friendly, and our Vietnamese staff and coaches often remark to me about why is it Americans keep asking about the war? That was a long time ago. It seems like there's a lot more to life than just that war that's several decades ago. So yeah, that's really an interesting part of interacting, given the history that America has with Vietnam, and exploring a little bit of that history and how people view that today. But from a personal safety point of view, it's quite safe. The biggest concern that is different from the United States is that there's a lot more, in the big cities at least, there's a lot more pickpocketing than there would be in the States, and bag snatching. So it has happened a couple times that someone has approached us and tried to, we found their hand in our pocket in the big cities, in Ho Chi Minh City. And we've had a couple instances of bag snatching where someone had a camera bag or a purse kind of nonchalantly hanging off the shoulder, and someone came by on a scooter and grabbed it as they were going by. So when you come on site, I'll give you some tips on that. Basically, keep money. Don't keep it out on something hanging that's easily taken, and be aware of your belongings when you're in the city, and especially in crowds. But most of the time, we're actually in the countryside that is quite safe, and things like that are fairly rare. So generally, take general precautions you would in a large U.S. city from that point of view, and you'll be fine. In terms of transportation, in my experience traveling in most countries, that's one of the bigger dangers is from road accidents, because traffic patterns can be different from the United States, and not quite as, it can be a little more chaotic, let's say. For the most part, this is not a big concern for us, because the speed in Vietnam is very slow of traffic, and we have our own bus. Each group has its own bus to bring us back and forth to camp and on our weekend trips. And so that really limits the risk. And being in the countryside, there's actually not that much traffic. In the cities, you can see the picture there. That's a picture likely from Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi. And you'll see there's a sea of mopeds. For every car, there's a good 30 mopeds that drive by. And so crossing the street is the first lesson you're going to have the first morning in Vietnam. I'll cross the street 2 or 3 times with you and teach you some tips on how to do it. It's intimidating the first time, but within a day or two, you'll be surprising yourself how easy it is. You just have to proceed slowly across the street. And the mopeds are going at a slow rate, and some will pass in front and some will pass behind you, and it's not as hard as it looks. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. In terms of health, one of my roles when I'm on site is to be the health and safety coordinator. One of the biggest things to do is to prevent sickness and illness and injury. Most people are perfectly healthy the whole time. The biggest complaints are a little bit of traveler's diarrhea, maybe one of the first days. Not sick in bed, but definitely a little bit of maybe discomfort or wanting to near within range of a bathroom for a day, just because we're getting used to the different climate and different food. The other actually biggest problem is constipation. So one of the biggest things we say is drink lots of water. Constipation and dehydration are not completely uncommon. So drinking a lot throughout the day is important. We're out sweating all day in the heat. The sun's quite intense. But most people go through the whole time without anything very major happening to them. The worst we've had is someone throwing up in the last couple of years since I've been working with the program, and it's including myself last year, and it passed within, for every single person that's had that happen, and it's a small minority, that has passed within half a day, and the next day we're back to normal. So nothing to be too worried about, but washing our hands commonly, drinking lots of water, getting good sleep to keep our immune system up, and eating a balanced diet. Eating a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables helps keep us our immune system high with getting the minerals and vitamins we need, and also keeps us our system regular in terms of avoiding constipation. We do bring a wide range of over-the-counter medication with us. Many of you do so as well. But we do have that on site for most common illnesses or discomforts. And we have a contingency plan in place for anything that's persistent or potentially serious. First going to the hospital in a nearby city or doctor. And if it were to be something more serious, we have plans in place all the way up to going to the capital or medical evacuation to a different country in the quite unlikely case of something severe happening that couldn't be treated well in Vietnam. But we want to make sure that you know that your health and safety is our top priority. And even if it's just for peace of mind, if at any point you want to go see a doctor or be brought to the city to be checked out, we certainly want to err on the side of caution and are very happy to do that. I will also have a cell phone that's available 24 hours while we're in Vietnam, so it's very easy to, if there were any issues, we can contact your family, and your family can contact us at any time were anything to happen. But Vietnam is a safe place, and I think all of you will have a quite good time. Okay. Next, talking a little bit about money. This is a common question. How much money do I need to bring? How do I access it? Coach for College covers the vast majority of the costs while you're in Vietnam. There are a few things you may have to pay for. A few extras on the weekends, a couple museums or historic sites that we enter might require a ticket of a few dollars. Often the Vietnamese group coaches want to bring the group out to a karaoke venue, which is a very typical weekend activity in Vietnam, so that might be a couple dollars. Snacks, a few snacks or those fruit smoothies I was talking about are inexpensive, but a few dollars might be needed for that. A massage is a highlight in Vietnam. An hour massage is about $10. Full pedicure and manicure might be another $2 on top of that, and many people enjoy taking part in that. So in terms of accessing money, there are ATMs that are quite accessible in Vietnam. You want to contact your bank before you leave to let them know your travel plans when you'll be in Vietnam so that they don't cancel the card thinking it's been stolen when you try to access money in Vietnam. There's usually a $1.50 to $2 fee on site in Vietnam, plus whatever your bank charges for each withdrawal, which can be about $5 usually in the U.S. So it's better to take a large amount out once rather than taking a smaller amount out 3 times. I also will reimburse your visa on arrival in Vietnamese money, so you'll have some of that. You'll pay in dollars at the airport, and when you leave the airport, then I'll give you Vietnamese money to pay you back for that, so you'll have some cash when you arrive. But ATMs is definitely the best way to access money, but I always recommend traveling anywhere in the world to bring some cash as a backup. You never know when your ATM card gets lost, the strip gets demagnetized, the machine might eat it. It's rare to happen. But it can happen, and you want to have at least some dollars as a backup. In Vietnam, dollars can be exchanged. They only accept at the exchange places, they only accept new bills without tears or even small markings. It's surprising what you think is a good bill that might be rejected. So try to bring new bills for that. I would recommend, I don't know, maybe it depends on how much you want to spend. Some people spend quite a bit buying a lot of souvenirs, and some people not very much at all. I'd recommend somewhere maybe about $50 in cash or so, up to $100 if you want. But I would say most people overall in Vietnam spend between $50 and $100. Because of the accessibility of ATMs, I would recommend not bringing too much cash, just to reduce the risk of theft. Okay. If you have any questions about this, definitely let me know, and I can also put you in touch with past participants to get an idea of what they spent. But with an ATM, it gives you a lot of flexibility. Communication is a common question. Vietnam is developing rapidly, and these things change. The accessibility to wireless does increase with time, year to year. I prefer to keep expectations on the low side, and if we're lucky, you might be positively surprised. I would anticipate that while you're at camp, we do not have access to wireless or internet. So that's Sunday evening through Friday afternoon when we're at camp. In those locations, there are internet cafes nearby, so once or twice a week we can stop the bus during that time, those 4 days that we don't have internet access. Monday through Thursday where we don't have any. Once or twice, maybe stop by for half an hour so people can communicate with home. And then we generally do have wireless on the weekends when we're traveling, so Friday night through Sunday afternoon. So that means that you have at least some contact with family most days, 4 or 5 out of the 7 days in the week. But you won't be able to be checking your Facebook every 5 or 10 minutes. We're in Vietnam for only 3 weeks, so there's a lot to learn, a lot to experience, new friendships that are forming. So to be able to concentrate on that is actually not a bad thing. And just as long as your parents and family know that you won't have access every day and not to worry, it's usually okay. When you arrive in Vietnam at the beginning, I also make sure that you write home right away so your family knows you've arrived. The one thing to bear in mind is that the internet is not as reliable. It might not work every day. Sometimes the internet is out. And so just realize you're in a developing country and things don't always work quite as smoothly as we're used to on a college campus in the U.S. In terms of communicating at home, Skype is by far the easiest and cheapest. You both have to be online at the same time to use it, or you can put money on it and call a phone from Skype. But if you're both friends and signed up, you've probably used Skype. But if not, I recommend signing up and signing your parents or other friends up you want to talk with. The time zone is different, so it's 11 hours ahead of Eastern Time. So if it's, as it says at the bottom there, if it's 4:30 p.m. on the East Coast, it's 3:30 a.m. the next day in Vietnam, 11 hours ahead, or 12 hours ahead of Central Time, the exact same time it is in Chicago, for example. If it's noon in Chicago, it's midnight in Vietnam, midnight later in the day. So you have to kind of coordinate the times to talk. I am not as well informed about SIM cards and international charges, but that's becoming more available and more possible for people to set up an international phone plan with their U.S. phone that they bring. Or to buy a local phone is possible with a Vietnamese SIM card. It's about $25 to buy a cheap Nokia and a few dollars to put some money on it, so parents can call if they want. Okay, well, that's it for today. In terms of next steps, keep up the fundraising. It's going well for many of you, and just keep it up. Maybe send out some follow-ups. Maybe coordinate with other people at your school who are going. Coordinate some common activity to fundraise on campus if you want. If you haven't made an appointment with a doctor or your campus health services to look into vaccinations, please do that very soon. Some vaccinations require a second administration some weeks after the first one in order to have maximum effect and to last you several years. So you don't want to wait too long to do that. So in order to get the second or third sessions in before you leave and maximize your coverage. Okay, and here's a link if you want to follow this. Last link, it gives from the Lonely Planet webpage, it gives a brief overview of some of the history of Vietnam. It goes back a long ways. It was under China for 1,000 years, the first 1,000 years after Christ, more or less, and has gradually expanded south from Hanoi, taking over the Cham Kingdom in the middle of Vietnam, and southern Vietnam, where our camps take place in the south, used to be part of Cambodia until a couple hundred years ago. So they've gradually expanded and have a long history that they're proud of. So reading a little bit about it can kind of pique your interest in the country and give you something to talk about with your Vietnamese friends when you are on site. Okay, well, that's all for now. As always, let me know if you have any questions.